welcome, my podlings, to Two and a Half Gays, the all-inclusive podcast for the Monday Millennial Queen. My name is Dino, and I'm joined by Wilson and...
Minky Minjad.
Minky Minjaj. So, folks, what have we been up to since I spoke to you last?
What have I been up to, guys? I've just been applying for lots of jobs because, I'd like to be employed again despite the pandemic. And I've been doing lots of Zoom calls and working out and trying to keep mentally stable during this extended lockdown period. So that's me. What about you?
I watched Hamilton for the first time the other day. It's so good, guys. It's a musical about... I know, it sounds really weird. It's a musical about an American founding father, and it's 3 hours long. But all the songs are fantastic. It's entirely black cast, or people of color. The songs are inspired by like hip hop and New Orleans jazz. It's just so fun and so funny. And if you haven't watched it, go watch it. It's real good. It's on Disney Plus. So
Wait, is it problematic now, Hamilton? Is it known to be problematic? I don't know why I heard something about that.
I have no idea. I don't pay attention. I think it's fine, but who knows?
I rediscovered old K-pop again, like from my childhood. And it was such an amazing road down memory lane because that's like Girls' Generation and Hyuna and like Big Bang. Sorry, that was random. And I remembered the dances and everything. It was so weird. It was like I was 13.
You knew the dances to begin with.
I was a gay 13-year-old boy watching women dance. What was I gonna do? Oogle them? Ogle them? Oogle. Ogle.
I'm so glad you brought up K-pop, though, because it really inspires me to talk about it.
Here we go.
No BTS.
All I'll say is, so I've been watching a lot of Hamilton videos online, and I've been watching a lot of BTS videos still online. So now my YouTube recommendations is capital F fucked. And I can't get out of it. And it's just like spiraling even further down. But I'm happy. That's all that matters.
Are you happy, or is it the illusion of
No, no,
being
no.
happy?
Honestly, I woke up the other day, when I just found out, when I just binged through a bunch of BTS videos, the next day I woke up and I felt so happy. I couldn't tell you why. I was just so lightheaded and happy. It really clears your skin. It's fantastic.
It clears your skin.
Highly recommended. On to the news.
So, the first thing that I have is that a report found that 93% of Black Lives Matter protests in the US were peaceful. So, two companies claimed to be Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project found the statistics. So, the other thing is that Cardi B recently put an Instagram video up, and she was defending herself and her lesbian sister against a high-profile Republican called Candace Owens and their Trump supporters. So basically, this person has been attacking and calling out Cardi B online for a number of years, apparently, especially because she's for the Democratic Party. And recently she did an interview with Joe Biden to spread awareness and to push people to vote, especially young people. I didn't know this, but she has a lesbian sister, and they got out of their car to go somewhere. All these Trump supporters apparently started heckling the sister and calling her slurs. And so Cardi B thought, if I'm going to defend myself and my sister, this is going to be the time. Yeah, so she called out the toxic Trump supporters and said Candace Owens started this because she was giving out... Oh, Cardi B's address got given out as well, which is something really dangerous to do for a celebrity, obviously. The video is 7 minutes long. I would recommend watching it. It was actually pretty interesting. I think Cardi B is more interesting than people think she is, and she has a lot more to say on politics and everything like that. But it was a nice video. I'm sure a lot of her fans will watch it and might encourage people to look up more political content.
In other news, the Oscars came out with new guidelines that start in 2024, which basically add in certain amount of diversity has to be either on screen or off screen in order for a film to be qualified for Best Picture. So it might be, I don't know, a marketing department has to be run by an African American, the director has to be female, etc. So this is pretty good overall. Because films take, I don't know, sometimes years, so they don't want to disadvantage anyone. Because the only way you can be nominated now is if you meet some of these quotas. And so maybe if you're already filming it, then you might be disadvantaged. Yeah, that'd be the only thing that I could think of. The rules are pretty easy to meet, so I don't know why this is so difficult for some people, but yeah.
I think one of the reasons they implemented this, I don't know how long it was in planning for, but when they released the news that they were going to that they have diversified the judging area of the Oscars, Oscars, the Academy Awards, it was because they were meant to meet a certain quota for women, and I know that they didn't meet that quota, so I think this is meant to level that out in the future, rather. Let's hope Mulan is not nominated for anything in the Academy Awards.
In other news, Michelle Bachmann says that transgender black Marxists want to overthrow America as a Canadian soccer star comes out as trans in a heartfelt Instagram post. Trump also wants to allow Catholic schools to fire gay teachers.
There's a new trailer for Dune, and it has Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya. It looks amazing. But enough about good movies that we're excited about. Let's move on to a shit one. Just to let you know, we're going to discuss the film in the podcast, and there will be spoilers because we are critiquing it. So if you want to watch the film for clean slate, which I don't recommend, then don't listen. There was a lot of controversy with this film because I think it was August last year, the main actress, she made a series of tweets supporting, well, one was supporting the Hong Kong police in obviously stopping the protesters from trying to gain more independence in Hong Kong and stopping the government from implementing rules and laws. And then she also made a comment supporting the Chinese government, and she retweeted, not retweeted, it's a Chinese website, I forgot what it's called, but she has like over 60 million followers on it. And she posted videos of the police controlling the protesters, and usually they were quite violent. It's not something that we would usually support, I suppose, especially seeing the Black Lives Matter movement happening. And the other controversy that came out on the day of the film, I'm pretty sure, or right beforehand. No, it would have come out on the day of the film because in the credits, they thank the government of that region for letting them film there. And if you don't know, because, well, you should know because we talked about it on the podcast before, is that that's where they are suppressing the Uyghur people who are of Muslim faith, and they've been detaining them, putting them in detention centers, doing horrible things to them. So the fact that Disney would thank that government and even film in that area, supporting their economy, is obviously deplorable. So I just want to say that I did not pay to see this film. I would never pay to support something like that. And yeah, there's been a big trend saying boycott Mulan, and it started a while ago, but it became mainstream because I believe a popular Hong Kong activist retweeted an article from CNN explaining what had happened. It garnered like over 40,000 likes and retweets, I'm pretty sure. And last night I read, because of the controversy, China has ceased all media coverage on Mulan. So I don't even think Disney is going to make their money back in China because of that. Yeah, so we're not allowed to advertise it, or I think I don't think they're allowed to advertise it anymore in China. But China's never been a fan of the animated Disney Mulan because it did not represent Chinese culture well either. And I don't think they're really going to watch a Western depiction of the live action one because there's already 2 Chinese ones. So yeah. So, as you probably know, as you're listening to this podcast, which is probably named something about Mulan, we're going to talk about it. So the remake was released on the 4th of September on Disney Plus, and I think in cinemas where it's allowed to without COVID restrictions and where people don't have Disney Plus in their countries. And some people were excited, some people were not. I was excited because I love Mulan, I love Asian representation, I love diversity. They were going to do something different for once instead of like doing shot for shot, a live remake. And we're going to say our opinions. It was fucking terrible.
Give me your rating. How many Quinlans out of 5?
I would give it, I watched the original last night as well, so I really am comparing it. I would probably give it like 1.5 out of 5 Quinlan.
Oof, that might be the lowest rating you've given thus far.
I think it is. Maybe 2. Nah, let's stick with 1.
Dino, what were your thoughts on the new Mulan?
I'd probably give it 3 dinos out of a possible 5 dinos. That's my measurement.
That's too many dinos.
All right, tell me why, Quinlan. Give me your case. Why did you only give it 1.5 Quinlans?
Okay.
So that's where you're wrong, Quinlan. No, go.
Okay, so if we're not comparing it to the original, let's just not touch that for now, because that could be a separate conversation. Okay, even without the original, right? There's already 2 live Chinese remakes, I'm pretty sure. And it did not do anything to even, the only good thing I'm going to say about the film is that they tried to do a Chinese style of cinema, right? Which was really cool for Disney to do. But even that was really lackluster compared to actual Chinese cinematography and Chinese stunt work. Like, if you watch, Crouching Tiger, or even the original Mulans, the live Chinese action ones, they're so cool. Like, that in Crouching Tiger, or one of the other films. They're like jumping off bamboo and flying through the sky. And in the original Mulan, she's like jumping off horses, and they use a lot of wire work. In this one, they hardly even like touched on that. So even for me, because I've watched a lot of Chinese films growing up, obviously because I'm half Chinese, it wasn't even fun in that aspect. And I don't think it was a good introduction to Chinese cinema. I think they just completely missed the point on that. The other thing was that it was completely Americanized, because this is a spoiler, but it's not really a spoiler. Like they say it right at the start of the film. It's established that Mulan has superpowers. And in the original Mulan, and like in like every freaking movie, the character usually has to work to get strong, like work to become the person they are. Even if they have a superpower, like in Avatar: The Last Airbender, he has the 4 elements, but he has to work to get those 4 elements. And that's what makes the character so interesting. That's why you're rooting for them so much. When a character starts out strong and doesn't need to work for anything, and the only struggle they have is hiding their power, it's kind of like, where's the character growth? Like, I don't understand. And I think the whole message of feminism was completely lost. It's because it's not saying if you're a girl, you can be strong. It's saying if you have superpowers, you're strong, which I just think is dumb. Like, and there are movies like with men who have superpowers, but usually they have to find their superpower and like practice with it. Like every movie that just starts out with someone strong, I feel like it's always been, it's got like probably like less than 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. What do you guys think about that?
I disagree. I get it, but it's like obviously it's this universe's version of the Force, and
Lazy.
no, I think what it's the argument it's trying to make, the reason why they included this in is to try to show that even when it's a metaphor for talent. So she's basically born with it. It's something she can't really control. She can harness it, obviously, but she's just talented, basically. But even though she is talented, she has to hide it because other people will think she's a witch. They think that girls are not allowed to have it. The other character that they added in is the enemy has a female, like, witch character. I don't know how to describe her. And she is also talented, but both of them are put down because of their talent. So when you think of it like that, I think it makes much more sense. And I think it's fine. I don't think the feminism is lost in it. If anything, it's let's say queer coded and much more openly feminist in that way.
I think it was lazy. In the original one, and I hate saying original because it's not the original one, in the Disney animated one, they play with femininity and masculinity, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of similar in that she has to hide her femininity, and in the new one, it's power. It's not femininity. It's her superpowers. Like it's playing with like hyper femininity and then hyper masculinity, right? And Mulan is neither of those things. She's a mixture of both, and she's struggling with her identity, like a lot of people do in life. Like the 3 of us kind of struggle with, I suppose, like everyone is, because no one should be either. And throughout the film, you see her kind of bring those things together. So it's really compelling, and you're like, oh, they're playing with this idea, and then in the end, the men dress up as concubines. That's what they call them in Mulan. They dress up as women, and so it also shows that like you also can be feminine and masculine to be a warrior. Like you need both of those things. So if you're too aggressive, then you use all your power at once, and you can't control it. But in the new one, when it's just like a superpower, you're not playing with that idea anymore. It's just kind of like any other superhero film where it's like, oh, I have this power, and I'm like Superman. I can't show it because I'll be, I don't know, taken out of society, and my loved ones will be in danger, which is the same thing as in Mulan. So I think it's just like, it's not, I know it doesn't have to be original, but it's just like really boring. And I kind of wish that I think it's the one Disney movie that they could have probably done the same, that people would have loved. Like if they were going to do any Disney movie the same, it should have just been Mulan, because we already have live action versions of Mulan. But yeah, I think that's just why it doesn't really work. Because the whole idea of Mulan is her dressing up as a man. Like that's the poem, that's the story. And if you want, and like they said they wanted to be more realistic with it, and by adding in superpowers and a witch, I don't really see the point. I was just like, why, kind of thing. Like you have the Marvel Universe now, you know. Also, Ki is not a power. Ki is energy. Ki is life. Like I don't know where, but I just know when Chinese people watch this film, they're just gonna cringe when she says my Ki, because it's like Ki is literally in trees. It's in grass. It's in the earth. It's in every single person. I don't know. They could have done something else instead of Ki. But yeah, that's kind of my thing on it. And yeah, I don't even like superhero films, so I guess that's the other reason. Because I thought it was going to be more fantasy based, but it was more superhero-y to me.
Wait, okay, what's the difference between a superhero and a fantasy?
Okay, there's this thing. When you include magic into a movie, like it's very hard to do correctly, right? Or superheroes, because they're so indestructible that it makes them non-relatable and it makes them boring. So in a film, you need them to have a weakness. Like in the Avenger films and most superhero films, they have a weakness. Like Superman has kryptonite. In Marvel, Iron Man is like a scientist and his machines can get destroyed. But in Mulan, I think she was like literally indestructible. She wasn't, but they made her that way. There was no point in the film where she really struggled. And for that reason, as a woman, if I was watching that film, not that I can speak on behalf of women, if I was watching that film, I would be like, like, where are my struggles represented? You know, just because like I think for Asian people it was really important to see that. And the fact that they just said Mulan is this perfect character and her only struggle is hiding her superpower, it was just like, oh well.
Yeah, but that is a struggle. It's like it's rather than a physical impairment like a Achilles heel, it's an emotional repression that she's going through. You know what I mean? Like it's changing the external threat into an internal threat. Which look, I don't think this film is great. I think it's fine. So I don't want to say I don't want to sound as if, oh, it's actually really good. The original is much better. And I agree with you that I think she is a weird workaround, but I think it's fine. Like, of all the changes they made, I think it's a fine one that they implemented.
I actually think it's fine, but they did it in the wrong way completely. Like, it took everything fun out of the story.
No, yeah, that's my bigger problem, is the fun part. Like, this film it basically kills off, again, it's less an adaptation of the poem than an adaptation of the Disney live action remake, right? It's almost beat for beat very similar to it. And when you do compare, because you have to, a lot of the side characters basically get killed off or really undermined.
Exactly.
And in doing so, it focuses it exclusively on Mulan, which is fine. That's the decision they wanted to make. But it means that there's very few lighthearted moments. I can't think of anything in it that was genuinely funny. And because it's not funny, I don't get as invested as I would have. Like in Mulan, so because I learned to love all the characters, they endeared themselves to me. I wanted to make sure they were fine. Whereas everyone in this movie, I couldn't give a shit. They could die for all I care, right? None of them have personalities. And then, okay, so you're focusing on Mulan, but again, she's brooding for the entire movie, right? She's repressed, obviously, but I don't know if that's enough to have a character on, especially when there's no way she can express it to the audience, like other than being mute for most of it. There's still little dialogue in this movie. It's shocking.
I was going to say, but the minor characters had more lines than her, but somehow they were not interesting.
No, not at all. Because a lot of it is exposition. A lot of it is explaining their opinions on women, which again is fine. It's what the original did. But they don't do it in a way where you feel like, ha ha ha, like, they're just dickheads. But like lovable dickheads. This is just like, oh, why should I care about them? There's nothing to them. And so, yeah, when you put so much of it on Mulan, and Mulan doesn't really get to express herself throughout the film, it is hard for me to get invested in what is going on.
Also, the actress was terrible.
I think she was fine. I think it's really hard, obviously, when English is your second language, to then.
She lived in New York for a while.
But English is her second language.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's an excuse for bad acting, to be honest. Like, if you look at other Chinese actors like Jet Li and Jackie Chan, they do very well. And there's even like comedians I know who are like Asian, and they do really well with English as a second language. Like, I don't really know why. Yeah. I don't think that's an excuse. I think she's just a bad actress. And I was reading comments on it, and a lot of Chinese people actually know her to be a bad actress in China, apparently. So I don't know. And it could be bad directing. They could have directed her horribly. The script actually wasn't very good either, so it might be that.
I thought one of the highlights of this film was the direction, though. I thought there's some beautiful shots right at the beginning of some of the scenery, and it has a really heightened aesthetic. I don't know how else to describe it other than like a Samsung filter, where it's just like everything's blown out completely. All the colors are deeply saturated. A lot of the crafts and costumes in it were just phenomenal. Like there were lots of bits in it that I thought were really good. I actually liked the action in the film. It's not, because it's drawing a lot more from, is it wuxia, the Chinese genre of action films, and I thought it did a pretty good job of highlighting what makes those genres so fun, but I don't think it went far enough, and I don't think it was enough to make up for what it was lacking in the story department.
Yeah, I actually thought, I didn't think the film was that beautiful. I thought, because I watched the original animation last night, 2 days after watching the Mulan one, and I was like, the original animation is way more beautiful than the live action. I thought Disney got the sets and the costumes wrong for the live action. Even I was watching it. People know I'm half Chinese, but I grew up in Australia. I've been to China like 6 times. I visited like all these temples. I visited ancient cities before and ancient villages, and I was like, this doesn't look right. Like, there's just something wrong about watching this. And when you mentioned saturated colors, I was like, China people didn't wear purple and all those types of colors. So then I did research, and I was like, okay, something's wrong. Like, I don't know what, but I just know it is. And also the setting looked weird as well. I was like, I've never seen those houses before, and I was right. So the director, writer, cinematographer, set director, editor, costume designer, producers, art directors were all white. That's a big fucking problem there, right there. The only research that the costume designer did was she went to a European museum where they had a Chinese section, and she went to China for 3 weeks. That was her research. So she wanted to keep it authentically Chinese somehow while still making it bright. One of her directions was to have 5 colors, at least 5 colors, in all of the women's costumes. They did not have 5 colors in each of the women's clothing back in China. That's one thing. And also the hair looked like something out of Hunger Games. But they would wear in the capital. There's no hairstyles like that in China. And also the house was from a completely different area in China. It's from the Hakka people. And Mulan's based in northern China. So it's just a completely different area. And it's not even the same time period. That's from 1,000 years before this film was based. And they wanted to appeal to China. That was one of the main things they wanted to do. And I think if you want to do that, if you want to make a film for Chinese people, you really have to get things correct. Because I can just imagine if they were doing a white people's historical film, they would want to get it all right. So that actually, all of that stuff really annoyed me. I feel like they didn't have to do a remake of Mulan if they really wanted to get into the Chinese market. They should have just made a sci-fi or original fantasy film where they could play with colors and they could play with settings and it didn't have to be all correct. But by making a Mulan remake where they said they were going to make things more realistic and more believable, and just by hiring all these white people and getting the costumes wrong and the settings wrong, I think it was just kind of offensive as a half Chinese person myself. But yeah, that's my opinion on that. And like you said, I don't think they pushed the fighting or action sequences enough. I don't even really remember them. And the other thing I was going to say about the cinematography and the direction is that the editing was really terrible. It was so choppy. They just used really they also use cliche Western styles.
Do you think possibly just because of how important this film is to you, you wanted it to be this amazing film, but you went in with
But there's a difference between, because this is the problem Game of Thrones had as well. There's a difference between there's the line of I forgot, Dina can correct me, but it's the line of disbelief, something like that. And there's a difference between a fantasy film where you have a dragon, say in the Mulan movie, in the original animation they have a dragon. But there's a difference between having a complete lack of the costumes during that era and the setting during that era. That's not something that you change in a fantasy film. You know what I mean? Because Disney said they wanted to make it realistic, they kind of tangled their words. If they said this was a fantasy film, then sure. The fantasy element was meant to be the witch and Mulan having powers. I don't think the is meant to be changing costumes.
When they said that, though, I think it got misconstrued. What they said was that they weren't going to be heightening it in the same way that they did with the original. The original animation is very much a product of Western creators.
Yeah.
Which is not to say that this one isn't, but more so, where you've got Eddie Murphy, as a funny dragon. There's songs in it. The Huns are not actually accurate in any way. They heighten those elements, which try to fit it closer to a traditional Disney animated film, right? You've got the funny sidekicks, you've got the fun musical songs. And I think when they went out and tried to make this film, I think the goal was not to put it into a Disney box. But I think in removing those elements, it ends up just being a lot blander. And there's nothing really that they add to it that makes it as interesting or noteworthy.
Yeah. When I originally saw the trailer, which was 2000, I'm pretty sure it was the start of 2019. I actually wasn't. I was excited, but when I saw the trailer, I was kind of disappointed. I don't know why, it just didn't excite me at all from seeing it. And then I was excited again just because I thought, you know what, it's Asian representation, it's going to be great. And the closer it got to the release date, I feel the less excited I got, because I think critics started coming out, and then the controversy happened with the main actress supporting the Chinese government in trying to control Hong Kong. And then right before the film came out, the day of, the controversy came out with the concentration camps. I just got less and less excited because I thought, wow, I can already tell that they've fucked up a lot of this. And every review that I've watched, and I didn't look up negative reviews, they were recommended on my YouTube, and on Twitter I just looked up Mulan. Everything I've seen from Asian people has been negative. And I think, and I even saw one white guy talk about it, a critic who I really like, and he didn't like the film. But it is I will have more of an opinion because I am half Chinese and it means a lot to me. But I think in general the film has just kind of got a lot of things wrong.
I don't want to make it out I really like this film. I thought it was fine. It's an average movie. But again, the parts that I really liked from the original, you couldn't do in a sequel. Oh, sorry, in a live action reboot. The way they wanted to, right? Chinese audiences don't particularly like musicals, and it wouldn't have been culturally appropriate, I don't think, to have musical, to make it a musical nowadays, because it's a very old poem, and it's not a musical. I loved all the fun sidekicks. Again, that's because I like sidekick characters. I mean, you probably couldn't have done that again, and like that's fine. I think the only thing was just like, okay, you're not going to have those elements. Cool. Okay, what are you going to add in? And I think they tried to do something with the wuxia style fighting and with the more dramatic cinematography, but I don't think they went all the way. It's more like as someone who has seen a couple of wuxia films, like it's a watered down version of what those films do best. And I think that if they wanted to go down that line, like, okay, go full bore and like make it Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Don't go like halfway and say, oh, I don't know if those whiteys are going to enjoy something that they haven't seen before. And it's like, no, just make the film you wanted to make.
Why did they add in a sister? Like in the original animation, as a grandma who's really funny, right? And she has some wisdom for Mulan. But I feel like the sister was kind of meant to make up for that. Not make up for it, but just replace a family member. And the only time we see the sister is at the start, where she's concerned about Mulan and she's scared of a spider. And in the end, when she tells Mulan that she has submitted to what her family wants and gotten married. And that's kind of like, I read a review and it said, if this movie is meant to be like feminist, why is the sister normal and gets married to a man? Like, what is that kind of saying? So it's kind of like saying, if you're good at something, then you can become great. And if you're not good at something, then you stay with society. So I don't understand that. Dina, what do you think of those two things?
I agree. I do not know why there was a sister. I haven't thought about it too much. Can't tell you why. Who knows? Maybe there is a good reason. And we're just too blind at the moment to think of it. But I can't. I don't know. I wonder if it has more cultural significance. The bird. We're calling it a phoenix. I don't know if they call it.
They called it a phoenix in the film.
Right. So it's this bird that rises from the ashes. I guess.
But guess what? That's Western. That's not even Chinese. Phoenixes don't rise out of the ashes in Chinese culture.
Oh, okay. Well, this bird doesn't rise from the ashes.
They say it does, though.
Who knows? I don't totally know why.
And the other thing was that there was a witch who was a new character, who was the villain. Well, kind of the villain of the film. What was really lazy about the witch was that obviously her and Mulan both had the chi powers, as they called it. And they did it in a really lazy way, where Mulan and the witch meet in the middle of the film, and the witch says, I'm just like you. They don't care about you. Like, join me, which is like a really lazy scene to put into the film, because rather than representing their similarities and how they were treated, they just say it.
But isn't that just like a classic villain move to be like, join me, together, we will rule the world?
Yeah, it's just exposition for a kid's film, I suppose. The witch wasn't really like, we don't know. I don't know, like, the villain was meant to be one of the most fun characters in the film, and this witch was just kind of bare. Like, I don't think, she's not like a memorable villain to me. And I know that's kind of become a thing with Disney recently, but like, this villain was like this, like, she should have been a gay icon with her claws and turning into a bird, but she just wasn't. She was just kind of there. And I don't know why, like, she was so powerful, and for some odd reason, she was working under this horrible guy who called her a dog and made her like feel terrible. I can maybe.
I wonder what that says about society.
Oh my god, that's true. Using powerful women, I suppose. But I was just so in disbelief. I'm like, you have all this power, and you're gonna submit to this man who you could kill in 5 seconds. Well, she says in the film, actually. Okay, but the one thing I hated the most was that she sacrificed herself. Why do women always? Why did she? Because it's like a trope in cinema for women to sacrifice themselves, especially powerful women. Why did she have to sacrifice herself for Mulan to live? And why didn't the man shoot Mulan again after she sacrificed herself? Why couldn't they have I was like, at least let her live so they can like have a happy life together. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know the shit out of me. The witch's purpose was basically to save Mulan in the end, and I didn't really see anything else. And also, the witch switched sides so quickly in the film. Mulan's just like, be noble and do the right thing, and she's like, okay, I'll show you where the freaking man is, where my leader is going to kill the king. Like, it was. I don't know. They didn't even. I'm getting too worked up.
Because this is an element that isn't in the original. Again, I keep saying the original, the animated movie. And I thought that was a really good addition, because I think it allows a greater contrast to show that like the focus is not like in the original film. I guess the villain is this Han army that's coming, right? And I think this film tries to reframe it and say, they're a problem, but really it's the patriarchy. The patriarchy is like everywhere, and so even if you defeat the Huns, it doesn't mean that like patriarchy goes away, right? Like it's still there, and so and it's on both sides, and it destroys the lives of women. It makes them feel inferior. Yeah, and I thought that was a really, of the additions they made, I thought that was one of the better ones, and I liked, and the fact that she dies, I think that's just to show that like it's I guess like a Hollywood trope where it's like, if you do crime, you got to pay the time. And so yeah, she's not a good character, right? Like she kill. We see her throughout the film like kill many people.
Yeah.
Helps the Huns throughout much of it, and so again, like it's a very basic film, and so the morality of it is that if you do something bad, then there has to be punishment for it. So that's why she dies.
Yeah, but no. Mulan killed people. It protected her.
Yeah, but in protection, there's a difference.
No, but I'm not talking of Disney films. Yzma didn't die in The Emperor's New Groove.
Didn't she?
No, she didn't die.
She becomes a cat.
She got turned into a cat. A
Yeah.
very cute cat. Wait, what other Disney films are there where the villains don't die? Cruella de Vil didn't die. I'm pretty sure. Did she die?
No, she gets to prison, isn't it? Yeah, like she's still punished for it, right? Like I'm
Yes.
not saying that they die. I'm saying they get punished for it.
I know, but that's so. She didn't have to. Why?
Most villains, period, right?
Yeah,
They die,
yeah.
and like
But she was more of an anti-villain than a villain. Like she was. I know that all the villains in Disney films are usually like outcasts, but in this thing, she was a minority who was outcast and like pushed to this way of being evil. And usually in those types of films, the anti-hero doesn't die. They learn from their lesson. And she could have gone to prison, like I guess, but like it could have been a moment of her like realizing, oh, I am bad. Like this is my chance to redeem myself. Like that was the only freaking character I felt for in the entire film, and they killed her. And in movies, you're meant to make the audience happy in one way or another, and they killed the only fucking character.
Newsflash, Quinlan, stories aren't about you. They're not about to make you happy.
This movie was about my culture, bitch.
Real life is not happy, Quinlan. People die.
It was like the shit on top of the cake. Horribly baked cake. In conclusion, I believe the film was terrible. It wasn't fun. It wasn't sad. It wasn't exciting. They did a watered down version of an actual Chinese film. This was Disney's chance to really do something good for Western Chinese people like myself, and to show China that Western people respect Chinese culture. And they could not do that. It's really upsetting because this was a time for Hollywood to see that people value Chinese creatives and they value Chinese actors and seeing diversity. And I honestly think that, I don't know if Mulan's ruined it or not, because Crazy Rich Asians did a really good job of doing that. But I think this controversy with the actress, this controversy with them thinking a corrupt government, and the fact that it was whitewashed has ruined the diversity that's going to come in the future. I really hope people see past it and that we can have more diverse films with Asian actors and actual Asian creatives behind the scenes. Thank you for listening to another episode of 2.5 Gays. You've been with Quinlan.
Dino.
You can listen to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube. That is all under 2.5 Gays. And we also have a playlist which is called Real Queer Artists that you can listen to. Thank you next, and stay wappy.